All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to each and every one of you. We're just waiting on Ernst. He was in here, but we've had a problem with the mics. Uh, I can hear him, but he can't hear me. So we're just trying to fix that. But I didn't want to make you guys wait, so we're going to wait for Ernst to set up on his side. He said he's going to leave quickly and then he'll come back in. I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the conversation series where I try to speak to interesting people in South Africa, people who know far more than I do about the topics of our country and specifically about how to fix the specific topics and problems that our country may or may not be dealing with. So I see Ernst is backstage. I'm going to bring him in. Ernst, how you doing?
Ja, ek kan jou duidelik hoor, so I'm pretty sure we fixed the problem.
All right, that is good. Sorry, I went live already, and I just said you'll join when you join. How are you, Ernst?
I'm doing well, and you? Is my camera frozen on your side, or is it working?
No, it is frozen on my side as well. There we go.
Okay, it should be. Yeah, there it's popped in now. Yeah, sometimes you just have to turn something off and act back on again, and then everything is fine.
Yeah, I think we should try that with the economy of South Africa and see how that goes.
I don't think that worked out so well. The ANC seems to have turned off the economy, and that's having disastrous effects.
That is actually true. I want to apologize ahead of time to all of the Afriforum members and people who want to have this in Afrikaans, but most of my audience is English. And so, Ernst, I know you can speak English. I've heard you before in podcasts. So hopefully we'll still have a fun conversation. I know you have an Afrikaans channel.
So I have my English channel called Conscious Caracal, and then I have my Afrikaans channel called In Alle Ernst. And every topic, everything that I discuss on my English channel, I always do some effort to discuss it on my Afrikaans channel as well. So that's my dual channel on YouTube. Yes.
Yeah, I that is insane. Like I've been thinking about doing that, and it's just like so much work that I'm just like, no.
I told someone the other day it's like playing on hard mode, so I don't expect everyone to try.
That is probably true. So, Ernst, before we get into, because I want to talk about the land issue, I was absolutely captivated by your speech that you guys uploaded to YouTube. It was fascinating. I think the other thing is also Julius Malema. I watched your video on that yesterday, and the work that you guys have been putting in, and I have a lot of questions about that. But before we get going, how did you end up with Afriforum? Like, what brought you to Afriforum? And then also, what is it that Afriforum? Well, actually, let me start with how did you get to Afriforum, and then I'll ask a follow-up.
So I started at Afriforum in 2019. I started working at the organization as a head of public, not as my current position is head of public relations. I started working at Afriforum as a campaigns officer for strategy and content. And it really was just a long chain of events that I can't really explain how it all just fell into place, how I ended up getting my dream job in the end. My whole journey really starts in a very common place where I think a lot of our journeys start, and that is just speaking my mind online, just seeing a lot of bullshit and a lot of bad information out there and thinking, well, I'm constantly wishing someone comes along to correct a lot of this disinformation and bad information and propaganda out there. But at some point you stop waiting and you realize, well, nobody's coming, or nobody's really coming to answer a lot of these questions. So it might as well be me. So that's where it starts. I start off my YouTube channel just to respond to some of the propaganda out there. And I mean, if from the beginning this was a long-term plan, I would have picked a username that's easier to spell than Conscious Caracal. So it was never I think Stefan Zeta is a bit easier.
Yeah, I wanted to do Stefan, just normal Stefan, but apparently that's already taken on YouTube. So I was stuck with Stefan Zeta. But I guess your story, like you said, is very similar to how I got into this entire political debate thing. And I
Mhm.
think most people, just genuinely start off sick and tired of the narrative. And that
Right.
sort of leads me perfectly into my next question. And if you will permit me a little bit of leeway for some satire, um, if I listen to the media, I I I now know for a fact that Afriforum are terrorists that is busy with treasonous, underhanded stuff, trying to undermine the South African government as if that is necessary. They seem to do a good job of that by themselves. But okay, so if I don't listen to the media, what is Afriforum? What is the
Mm.
purpose of Afriforum?
So what you described there is pretty much Afriforum becoming the successor to Jan van Riebeeck, where Jan van Riebeeck was always blamed for everything. And I think he's just having a sigh of relief, thinking, I thought these guys were never going to give me a break. At least Afriforum is getting some of the blame now for everything. When a News 24 journalist or an ANC politician wakes up on the wrong side of the bed and stubs their toe, they think it's Afriforum doing some conspiracy. But no, Afriforum is very simply an organization that is trying to build a future in South Africa where Afrikaners can be safe, prosperous, and free from discrimination and persecution. And at the same time, also fighting for all minority groups in South Africa, because it's not just Afrikaners that are being targeted by the race laws. It's not just Afrikaners that are being scapegoated by the government. And it's not just Afrikaners that face threats of violence from where politicians incite violence. Afrikaners are one of the main targets of these things, and white South Africans as well, the broader white South African community. But a lot of minorities in South Africa are easy scapegoats for the government to point to and say, well, these guys are the reason why everything is falling apart in the country. So in short, that is our mission. We are an unashamedly Afrikaans and Christian organization, culturally an Afrikaner organization. But I mean, a lot of the work that we do is not just for Afrikaners. I mean, we're fighting for people's right to freedom of expression, when we're fighting in court to protect people's right to private property or freedom of association or freedom of religion. Any of these different constitutional rights that we fight for as a civil rights organization benefits all South Africans, not just Afrikaners. But we have a specific focus and a founding focus on Afrikaners and the future of Afrikaners in South Africa. But we have a wider mission of just making South Africa a better place and ensuring that a lot of these groups, especially minority groups that are targeted by the government, actually get an organization that stands up for them. Because what happened, unfortunately, is over the past 30 years, party politics, just the entire system of party politics, has failed minority groups in this country to protect minority groups and to make sure that the government cannot discriminate against them or target them with expropriation without compensation or scapegoating or chants about them being murdered. So at some point, the founders of Afriforum decided, well, if the party politics system is failing so badly to protect minorities, maybe we should look for a solution outside of the party politics system. Not telling our voters or not telling our supporters to not go vote, but just to broaden their perspective. Go vote, but also do many other things in addition to voting. I think that's the main message of Afriforum, is if you go vote in an election, you're doing the bare minimum. We're not anti-democracy in telling people don't go vote. It's not going to make a difference. We encourage our members to go vote, but then to not just stop at, I voted, I waited in line, I made my little X, and now I can go pour myself a nice cold beer because I pat myself on the back because I did my part. No, you just did the bare minimum.
So that actually touches on something that I'm very passionate about, because I am anti-democracy. I don't believe in the democratic experience because of exactly what you just described there. It takes ordinary citizens and turns them into automatons almost, where, oh, this is the political sphere. I go make my X, and then I sort of forget that there's a world to be run. But you mentioned something that I think is incredibly interesting. Most people think of South Africa as a nation, but you just said, and I think this is the thing that's so lost in the global conversation, South Africa isn't a nation. It's a collection of minorities. Because
It's
almost
the
everyone, with
best
the
the
exception of
best
the Zulu
description.
Nation.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
best description that I've ever heard of South Africa is from Professor Koos Malan, who said that South Africa is a multi-nation state.
Yeah, that is actually, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. That was, I don't know if you saw Willem Petzer's interview with Kule on Truth
I
Report.
saw it on my feed. I haven't watched it yet.
So in that, what's actually super interesting is they touch on this exact topic, right? The original idea, and I should make a clarification here. When we're talking about apartheid here, I'm talking about the original idea of it, not the implementation, because it's in the implementation where we so often see the corruption spread. But the original idea was kind of every single minority group taking care of itself, right? Governing itself, running its own affairs. So on that, I think a lot of people are asking the question, is it true? Daily Maverick had an article about you guys about 2 days ago saying that you guys are building a parallel state. Is that true? To what extent is that true or not true? And what is your general response to that?
So what we're doing actually has a pretty cool name. What we're doing is we're state-proofing our communities. I think that's a lot more accurate. So we're not just protecting our communities from state failure, and there's sure a lot of that going around, all of us going on, but we're also making sure that our communities are less and less dependent on the government, a government that wants people to be dependent on it. I mean, there's a reason why the ANC created this welfare industrial complex over the past 30 years, where more than 50% of the population is dependent on some form of government grant, and the ANC brags about it. They don't see it as a bug, they see it as a feature of the system. And when it comes to state proofing, that's where Afriforum has a completely different philosophy. We don't want our members to be dependent on the government. We also don't want them to be dependent on us. We want self-sufficient communities that are state-proof and able to solve the problems that are affecting them specifically. So I think building a parallel state is a very dramatic way of framing what we do. I think a much more accurate way is just to say we're building state-proof communities that can stand on their own 2 feet and that are not dependent on any government for their future. They can take matters into their own hands and solve problems in the best way that they know how. Because in the end, the community itself that is being affected by a particular problem knows as firstly has a lot more to lose if the problem is not solved, where a government will often just brush it off saying, the problem's not that bad. I.e. farm murders, it's just normal crime, stop crying about it, that type of mentality, where the farmers or the people that are being affected by this crime phenomenon don't see it as just normal crime. They see it for what it really is. So when it comes down to particularly those state-proof communities, it is helping people and communities to help themselves. That's what Afriforum and the broader solidarity movement does, making sure that Afrikaners and other minorities, anyone that wants to follow our blueprint, does not put all of their eggs in one basket, in the party politics basket, or the entire fate is just dependent on the outcome of an election. That is a very precarious position to be in, and that's what we are doing in regards to making sure that our future is not dependent solely on the outcome of an election, but rather dependent on what we build and what we do.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, it speaks to so many of my own beliefs around how society should operate. Even if you look at a federal system, the idea is that the government should be as close to the people that they govern, because that councillor, right, that lives in your neighborhood, if that road doesn't get fixed, people are going to line up outside the councillor's house and be like, what the hell is wrong with my road? Whereas in South Africa, it's sort of spheres of government, and every sphere is more and more hundreds of miles away from you, to the point where most of the big decisions are made in the union buildings in Pretoria.
Yeah, if you're a person living in the Cape Flats suffering from gang violence and being the victim of gang violence, the police that are supposed to solve the problem are getting orders from Pretoria, like more than 1,000 kilometers away.
Yeah, and we see this problem with farm murders, where the police is
Right.
clearly not interested in actually solving the problem. Instead, they're spending far more. If they spent the resources that they're spending in denying that it's happening on just fixing the problem would have
Mm.
been solved already.
Mm.
Yeah, so
Just to add there, I think there is a difference between your local level police station and the national the national side to police. I think the local police station doesn't really have a lot of politics that's driving what it's doing. I think the local police station in a community is just completely overwhelmed. The problem that comes in is where you have a police commissioner or a higher up in the national structure regarding police that maybe has a political agenda or doesn't want to address certain types of crime. Because I've seen that difference where, especially just in on most cases that where Afriforum is involved, on the local level, we get a lot of very good cooperation with police stations, with our neighborhood watchers and the like. There's no real ideological fighting or anything going on there. It's just a problem that needs to be solved, and the local police station is just glad that there's people that are standing up to help them. The problem comes in at national level, where you have politicians with an agenda, with an ideology, that don't want to see Afriforum succeed, because Afriforum is making people less dependent on the government. As I said earlier, that National Democratic Revolution agenda, their sole focus is to make as many people as possible dependent on the government. So any force, any organization that makes people less dependent on the government, that weans people off that drug, is necessarily an enemy, or it's designated as an enemy to that National Democratic Revolution. And that's why Afriforum is being attacked as treasonous. That's why the ANC and their allies and their lackeys label us as traitors and treasonous, and we're literally being investigated for high treason. That investigation is still ongoing by the Hawks. This talk that we're having now is probably going into that docket, so your name's going to be there as well. But when it comes to particularly that dynamic that's playing out, what Afriforum is doing is considered treasonous, because what we're doing is we're threatening that dependency agenda of the ANC. We are threatening the National Democratic Revolution that wants 100% of South Africans dependent on the government, because then you don't criticize the government, then you don't oppose the government, then you don't stand in their way for anything, not even for corruption, because otherwise your life is in their hands. Everything, your entire life is dependent on the government, meaning that they can just close that tap and not just make your life harder. They can end your life, because your entire income, all of your resources, your healthcare, everything will be dependent on the state in the perfect world that the ANC wants to create, meaning that they can literally turn the lights off on your life. They can load shed you out of existence if you don't play ball. That's why they want that dependency, that total state dependency, and that's why they also view organizations making people state proof as the enemy.
I think you just you mentioned an interesting distinction. The problem, as you said, isn't with your local police. It is the fact that to fight gang violence, for example, or farm murders. Let's use farm murders, and I've made this point a million times. The normal, dressed in blue police officer isn't equipped to fight a farm murder pandemic. This is completely
and
different
the
landscape.
the local policeman also doesn't know what the National Democratic Revolution is, nor does he care.
No, he's just doing his job, or maybe not doing his job, depending on the kind of cop that he actually wants to be. But this does lead me to maybe sort of building on what you just said. And a lot of my audience is going to get really angry at me because I keep bringing this up, but it explains everything so perfectly. Thomas Sowell, conflict of visions. This is the issue. The vision that the DA, and I do include the DA in this, the ANC, the FF, the MK have, is this vision of every human error, every problem of humanity is simply a failure of a state institution that just needs to solve that problem. So, poverty, for example, we just need a stronger state institution and poverty will go away. It's not a natural, inherent flaw within humanity. It's a failure of the system. As a result of this, I have seen an increase in attack on Afriforum, even now from the DA. you know, and in most ways, if you listen to the DA's official language, they're for a free market, right? They're for the people. I mean, Jordan E. Lewis had his famous speech a few days ago or last week where he said citizens should be citizens, not subjects. But then Afriforum are Afri-MAGA, according to their previous leader. So what's happening? Why is it that Afriforum has become this sort of lightning rod for just all of this ire being pumped into?
So, I mean, from the beginning, it's not like Afriforum just became a scapegoat yesterday. This has been ongoing ever since before I even started working for the organization. On the one side, it does come back to that state dependence argument. I'm not going to repeat that one. I think that is a part of it, but there's another part here as well. And the other part, and this makes, I think, most politicians uncomfortable, is the fact that Afriforum proves that you don't need government to solve a lot of your problems. You don't need these politicians to be on massive salaries because they're just high and mighty. They know how to solve these problems. You stupid plebs don't know how to solve these problems. Leave it to the government. It's Afriforum and our successors with our minuscule budget in comparison with the government proves that you don't need these politicians to solve a lot of these problems. So that, I think, is the central threat. And I mean, Urania is another example. Urania is not attacked because it's an Afrikaner community. It is one of the reasons, but it's not the main reason. The main reason Urania is attacked by politicians is because Urania does exactly the same thing that Afriforum does, and it proves that you not only don't need politicians to solve your problems or need government to solve your problems, you're better off if the government just keeps its distance. I mean, one of the scariest things you can hear in South Africa is the phrase, "I'm from the ANC-led government and I'm here to help." I'm like, no, I'd rather not. I would prefer you not help. Thank you. So that's where a lot of this comes from. So yes, on the one side, Afriforum is state-proofing our communities, but Afriforum and Urania is proving that you don't need ministers and deputy ministers and all these different like massive salary bureaucratic positions, this bloated government, to actually do quite a lot with a very little amount of money. You just need to spend that money wisely and not waste it and not be corrupt and not loot that money. Now, Afriforum and the Solidarity Movement aren't anarchists in the sense that we want to see a future without a state. We just want to see a much smaller state because the big state model in South Africa is very clearly not working. We would rather devolve a lot more responsibility to community level because those communities are proving that they can do a lot better job than a lot of politicians and bureaucrats, and they understand their situation a lot better than a lot of these people sitting in political office in Pretoria.
So I do. This was raised in chat, and I wanted to ask you because I have an answer to this, but since you're from Afriforum, I'll let you respond to it.
Sure.
Go says, we don't need Afriforum to actively seek to do away with the refugee program. Ernst, is that what Afriforum is doing? Like, are you guys actively trying to sabotage the refugee program or stop the refugee program?
No, this was a narrative that came out of an ANC source. Actually, go look up where this narrative comes from. I can't remember that guy's name. There's this white ANC member. I'll get to his name. He was last year. He was in the news quite a lot, and he created this narrative that Afriforum is trying to sabotage the refugee program. Like, no, Afriforum
just blame Peter Kriel.
No, it's not Peter. It was another guy. No, it's another guy. But anyway, I'll get to his name now. So what Afriforum's stance is regarding the refugee program from the beginning was, firstly, we welcome the fact that it exists. We think there should be that type of refugee program for those South Africans that don't see a future in South Africa anymore. Their lives have been destroyed by race laws. They probably, if they survive multiple farm attacks, they went through something traumatic that has destroyed any hope for them in the future in South Africa. There should be an option for them to leave. There should be an option for them like this refugee program. Nowhere has Afriforum said the refugee program should be ended or it shouldn't exist or that it's a bad idea. But, and I think this is where maybe some confusion comes in. I'll give some of these people the benefit of the doubt. The confusion comes in that Afriforum is not actively championing the refugee program, as in encouraging people, everyone should use it, everyone should use it, it's the best, it's the future of Afrikaners. Because no, it's not going to be the sole solution for the future. The vast majority of Afrikaners for the foreseeable future are going to stay in South Africa, and that's very clear 1 year later, where only about 8,000 people have used the refugee program option. Now, that doesn't mean those people are now no longer Afrikaners or they're traitors or whatever negative label you want to give them. I've looked at a lot of their cases, and it's very genuinely people that have gone through horrific things in South Africa, and I don't blame them for leaving. But the majority of Afrikaners, very clearly, as we already predicted at the beginning, are going to stay in South Africa, because that's what's working for an organization like Afriforum gives me the opportunity to interact with thousands of Afrikaners on a regular basis, so I get a pretty good idea where the zeitgeist amongst Afrikaners is, and through our polling, our internal polling as well, we found that the majority of people, and amongst our members as well, are planning to stay in South Africa and won't be taking the option. So I mean, that's a reality, and that's where Afriforum's stance is. So yes, so once we determine, well, all right, the majority of Afrikaners are not going to be taking this option, someone still then has to build a future for those Afrikaners that continue to stay. The millions of Afrikaners that choose to stay, there has to be an organization that represents them and that's building a future for them as well. So that's what Afriforum's founding mission was in 2006, to build a future for Afrikaners in South Africa. And we're going to stick to that mission. And good luck to those who do use Donald Trump's refugee offer. I mean, the offer is on the table, and Afriforum has done nothing to take that offer off the table. The narrative that Afriforum is trying to take that offer off the table, as I said, can be traced back to an ANC representative that injected that into the discourse. And unfortunately, some people fell for that narrative.
Yeah, I think just to respond, because I see Go as well as Chris in the comment section, to respond to this and to make sure that you guys understand, there is a major difference between saying, look, thank you for the refugee offer, but we also need tools that enable us to fight here. And Go, you asked for proof that the majority of South Africans will stay.
The last year's proof. Yeah, the last year's proof. The fact that the majority of Afrikaners have not left. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. Just before we continue, I don't want to forget the name of that ANC representative is Neil Diamond, not the singer. Neil Diamond, the ANC cadre. I literally have the clip of him here, where he's in front of me, where he's talking about the Afriforum's evil influence, and with that we're trying to influence the refugee program. And then my response to his clip was just posting a photograph of him literally a photograph of him in an ANC shirt. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you now.
No, not at all. I mean, we're here to listen to you, so I don't want to do too much of the speaking, but I do just want to say, I can just use anecdotal evidence in my own life of the dozens of people that I know maybe 3 people that are taking up the refugee offer. The rest of the people just don't want to do it. And it's not that they hate President Trump or hate America. It's that they love South Africa. You know, this is where their parents are buried. This is where their family is. They don't want to go. It's a big move. And I don't think anyone begrudges people that want to leave for a better life in America. But as Afriforum has said, as I have said multiple times, we need tools here in South Africa to fight the blight of the communists, the ANC, the DA, these guys. And that's not going to help if everyone goes to America. We're not going to fight this fight. Now, if the majority, and I would like to get Ernst, let's say the majority of South Africans or white South Africans decided at the end of this year, okay, enough, we're going. And we immediately find out that there's 2.3 million white South Africans are now leaving for America. Would that anger you? I'm assuming that would definitely change your operations quite considerably.
If if 3.3 million Afrikaners or white South Africans left South Africa, it would make me angry. It would just make me sad, seeing as that this was their home. South Africa is their home. The majority of Afrikaners have been in South Africa for 9, 10, 11 generations. The fact that in this hypothetical scenario, millions were forced to leave South Africa, to flee South Africa, is an incredibly tragic situation. But just to add to that point again about the how many are leaving, I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I will adjust my position the day that there are actually hundreds of thousands leaving. But the fact remains, up until this point, only 8,000 have left, and I will respond to the reality in front of me. You can talk about hypotheticals all you want, not talking about you specifically, but I mean, I just don't see it. You've mentioned people you know personally in your life that have opted or want to use the option. I personally don't know anyone, and I work in a field where I just constantly am talking to Afrikaners. So I understand in theory that there could be a surge in Afrikaners leaving somewhere in the future. I just don't see it happening. And if that happens, I will react to that state of affairs. But at the moment, my job is to analyze reality, the reality that's playing out in front of me. My job is not to primarily focus on hypotheticals, and hundreds of thousands of Afrikaners leaving South Africa as refugees is currently a hypothetical. It's not a reality. Yeah. So if that reality plays out, you can have me back on your show and we can talk an entire 2 hours about that reality. Yeah. But at the moment, I'm talking about the reality in front of us.
I firmly agree with you. And I also think it's important people understand there are some things that if you do start saying it, especially from an official capacity, and we do have Ernst here as an official representative of Afriforum, while he might say things in his sort of personal capacity as well today, if he made a claim suddenly that is completely unfounded, what value would that serve? It would just give the media more ammunition to write all sorts of nonsense stories. So it's important to keep that in mind as well. But that let me ask you this. It's a question that a lot of people have asked you, and I'm sure you've gotten this. What happened? Or what happens between Afriforum and America? Because we know you have met with Brent Bozell. We know that you were at the White House. You were meeting with officials from the Trump administration. What happened in those meetings that happened last year, and then also the Brent Bozell? What is the discussion that you as Afriforum put to America?
So, yes, so our proposal to America, the broad sense, I mean, I can give you the entire timeline, but I mean, that's going to take a lot of time. But you can stop me. We can park the conversation at any point. So broadly, what Afriforum and the Solidarity Movement's proposal was, firstly, thank you for shining a light on what's happening in South Africa. Thank you for the executive order. Thank you for the pressure that the Trump administration is putting on the ANC and the ANC-led South African government. That's indispensable. Thank you very much. And then secondly, what's our solution? Well, the solution is to continue with that pressure. And then secondly, to help the organizations and the people in South Africa that are making a difference, building a future here. Now, what that roadmap will look like, that is still yet to be determined. But as I said earlier, there needs to be a two-pronged approach. And this is the stance of Urania as well. Yes, have the refugee program for those who want to leave, but also help those who want to stay. Help us build a future here by helping us build schools, universities, and helping us with a lot of our projects, like our community safety projects. So that's something that's on the table. That's still very in the early stages, so we'll see where that goes. But I mean, that's something that was disclosed as well after the most recent meeting with the Brent Bozell and his team, was that Afriforum wants to be a key role player in helping make South Africa safer and making South Africa, building a future here in South Africa for not just Afrikaners, for all minorities and the entire population that don't want to live under the boot of an ANC-led government that is committing human rights violations, that's discriminating against its own citizens, that is destroying the economy and destroying South Africa's future. So that's in short what our plan is and what we're aiming for. But there's still a lot of water that needs to flow into the ocean. So we'll see what comes of that.
So let me ask you this, and I know that there are certain things that you will probably not be allowed to discuss. I've spoken to some people who have been in high level meetings with America about the stuff that's happening in South Africa, and I was told in very
Mm,
firm words, some of what's been discussed may not be outed, at least not at
mm,
this date. So,
mm,
what do you believe the chances are of the American government acknowledging the right to self determination for
mm,
something like Orania? So, in
mm,
other words, recognizing Orania as a
mm,
sovereign state
mm,
within the borders. Do you think there's
mm,
any appetite for that? Or do you think
mm,
the Americans wouldn't press the nuclear button on
mm.
that?
So, well, firstly, there's just one thing that I forgot. The other thing we also told the Trump administration very clearly from the beginning is that if you are going to punish anyone, don't punish the population of South Africa, don't punish the people of South Africa. Laser focus on those politicians that are committing human rights violations and that are complicit in corruption. You can target them with sanctions, but don't sanction the entire population of South Africa. Don't punish the farmers or the people or the Afrikaners or anyone living in South Africa. Punish those that are destroying South Africa. In regards to Orania, well, I don't think there's any chance because not even Orania wants to be recognized as a state at this point. But Orania is, and I don't want to speak for Orania, but very clearly what the Orania movement wants at this point is just recognition of the Orania movement as a legitimate option for Afrikaners in South Africa. And that's what I know they've been communicating to the Americans as well. So I don't think there's going to be any recognition of a state where Orania is or anything in that capacity, because I don't think that capacity exists yet. Orania is just 3,000 people. They don't have the
Yeah.
capacity of being a country at this point. So I don't think they are at that point where they would ask for that type of legitimacy to be granted to them. I think what they are asking for is simply the legitimacy of recognize the Orania movement as a viable and positive option for Afrikaners that don't want to leave the country. And I think that's very probable. It's very probable that the American administration mentions Orania in a positive light as people building a future for Afrikaners. So I think that's a lot more likely.
So this is my question then.
Mm.
You have people in the MK, for example, that
Mm-hmm.
are desperately trying to repeal, is it Section 235, the right to
Yeah, Afriforum
self-determination?
is taking them on about that. Yes.
Yeah. If they were to succeed, because, I mean, fundamentally, our constitution just requires a two-third majority to be changed. So if the ANC, EFF, and MK agrees on that, they can change the constitution and remove that segment, which was sort of built in, is my
Mm.
understanding, because the Afrikaners were promised that there was going to be this conversation on the right to Afrikaner self-determination.
Mm.
If that is removed, what stops the ANC from simply bulldozing into Orania and saying, nope, you must take black people in, you must take English people in, you don't have a choice. And where to from there?
I've got very good news. The fact everything Afriforum is doing and everything Orania is doing is not dependent on Section 235 of the Constitution. Section 235 of the Constitution is very important, but Afriforum and Orania's whole philosophy is you don't ask for permission, you create a reality, and then you create a reality that's impossible to ignore. So a lot of people have this backwards. They think you ask the government for permission, and then when they give you permission, then you can start building your future. And that's not what Afriforum or the Orania movement does. The Orania movement and Afriforum create a reality on the ground and create a reality that's so impossible to ignore that the law and the recognition then follows. But it's not dependent on that recognition. So, for example, on a smaller scale, for example, our neighborhood watches. When we create a neighborhood watch, Afriforum, we don't ask the police, can we please start a neighborhood watch? We start a neighborhood watch, we build it to a certain capacity where it's established in the community, and then we inform the local police station that we have started a neighborhood watch. If you want to do some cooperative things, let us know. And the same goes with Orania. Orania didn't ask for permission to exist. Orania created a reality, and then the reality was impossible to ignore. And I mean, this is something that we've heard that I heard in person at a meeting not many years ago, a few years ago. I was in a behind closed doors meeting at the United Nations, and the South African government was there as well. And the UN body CERD, the Committee for the Ending of Racial Discrimination, asked the South African representatives there, we heard about this town, Urania, that seems to be discriminatory. What are you going to do about it? And a very high up official in the ANC said, there's nothing we can do. They're not doing anything illegal, meaning that Urania doesn't exist because they have some permission from the ANC. The ANC has no grounds to attack or destroy Urania. Urania is a reality that was created. The metaphorical example I always use is that in theory, yes, if there is a badger in a hole, you can use your bare hands to get that badger out of that hole, but you're not going to do it because you're going to get scratched up and destroyed in the process. Urania is that badger in the hole, and the government has two bare hands. They can try to get it out of that hole, but they're not going to, because it's a lot more trouble than it's worth. So that's the model that you should be following, not constantly begging for recognition, begging for permission, but rather simply getting to work, building a reality, and then letting the reality speak for itself.
I think that's a similar thing to the arguments that's been made about Cape Independence, even though I'm iffy on Cape Independence necessarily. But the argument is just do whatever you want, right? It's not like the ANC isn't doing whatever it wants. Just do it and then let the ANC see how they can deal with it. Yeah. My biggest problem is with what you just said there. Someone asked, what are you going to do about this town that's discriminating? In what way is Urania this is like saying I'm discriminating against every one of the 60 million people in South Africa because they're not allowed to live in my house. It's like, well, it's my house. I'm allowed to say yes or no to people coming into my house. They're not like, this is the thing that Carl Neos, I made a video about this a while ago. Carl Neos said the government needs to take bulldozers and bulldoze the entire town of Urania and arrest every single person in there. And this, to me, is revealing of the mindset. Urania isn't enslaving anyone. Urania isn't discriminating against anyone. Urania isn't making a value judgment on the character of people. It's merely existing, and it should be made clear, they're in the Karoo. How many people do you know clamoring to go live in the Karoo somewhere?
But I challenge people that hate Urania. I will bet good money that they can't point out Urania on a map with a 250 kilometer margin of error.
Yeah,
I will grant them a 200. I will grant them a 300 kilometer margin of error that they point to me where Urania is on a map of South Africa, and I bet you they will fail.
I don't even think I could do it. The fact of the matter is, the only people who most people who live in the Karoo want to get out of the Karoo. Like, no one's clamoring to go live there unless you're like very, very nostalgic about it. So this idea that it's somehow, this discriminatory town is just ridiculous. So let's talk about another kind of discrimination, or at least you guys made this incredible report, sort of attacking, which I actually appreciate of you guys, is you seem to now start to go after the foundations upon which the discrimination in our country is actually built. The land issue. For years, I grew up and I believed that white South Africans own the majority of the land. This is just a foregone conclusion, no debate. Explain your report, please.
All right. So our report is very simple, actually. It starts with a very simple idea. Just as you said there, for many years, people are just repeating this lie. White people own 72% of the land in South Africa. And people are saying it with absolute confidence, like it's a law as ironclad as gravity. And politicians are saying like it was found by a scientific study found that this 72% of the land is in white people's hands. And Afriforum, it's surprising, but Afriforum in 2026 was one of the first organizations to ask, where does this information actually come from? Like, we are one of the first organized, not the only, but one of the first organizations to just ask a follow-up question, just to not buy into the confidence of which this this statement is being made, and just saying like, I don't believe you. Let's look into this. So we actually looked into it, and spoiler alert, it's completely false. Like it's like an egregious lie. So this 72%
By the
figure
way,
is
sorry, Aaron,
sure.
sorry to interrupt you. If there's
Mm,
anything that you would like me to show on the
mm,
screen, you can just DM me on X, and I'll
sure. Yeah,
I'll
well,
I'll show it there.
at the moment, I think all of the information is in our report, but I don't think it's going to
Mm.
serve the audience. It's going to add too much extra information just putting the information
Yeah.
on the screen. So I'll
Okay.
I'll let you know if there's anything. So
Yeah.
I think something that that a lot of people don't know is the fact that this 72% figure comes from the 2017 land audit. So Afriforum says, okay, fine. There we have our smoking gun. This is where this claim comes from. Let's investigate. Maybe we find out this audit is like fantastic, but I mean it's like watching a bad movie made by a person who is known for bad movies. You know it's going to be bad. Like the 2017 land audit brought to you by the same people that brought you load shedding and the post office. So we're like, okay, fine, but let's go in with an open mind. And it's just all over the place. It's much worse than I thought. And I mean, I'm not a positive guy when it comes to my view of the ANC, but I mean this land audit report is shocking. So first off, I mean the whole report is based on the premise that you can categorize people into different racial groups, like these apartheid era groups of black, Indian, colored, and white. And then you realize, but none of these groups have a legal definition. So there's no legal definition for what it means to be black or white or Indian or colored. So the government is applying these labels that it is sorting the land into or land ownership into. They're applying it on a you'll know it when you see it basis. But even though there's no legal basis for these terms, if you wrongly classify yourself as black, but the government sees you as white, you can be prosecuted for fraud. So it's not just some trivial matter. This is quite serious, but it's based on like fluff. It's not based on anything. So that's the first flaw, is that you're talking about which of these racial groups owns how much. What is the definition of that racial group? We don't know. You'll know it when you see it. But secondly, what's also very important to know is that then you look into the methodology of how this report was. How did they determine? Like, is there some massive list of all the land in South Africa? And it tells you, oh, here is Stefan's house, and it's listed as white. Here is Johan's farm. It's a white-owned farm. Here is Cyril Ramaphosa's Pala Pala. That's black-owned. No, nothing like that exists. So what the land audit report did was it dug through all of the statistics it could find, and it found some land ownership that is provable by race. It's about a third of all land in South Africa. There's a clear link. There's statistics to prove who owns it, but the other about 70% we don't know. Like, you can't determine. It's not some register out there showing you this. But how did they fill the gaps? And here's where it gets really dodgy. Here's where the audit really just starts falling apart on like the first few pages. They started looking at people's names and surnames. So now this is going into deep speculative, like, they're looking at, oh, this name sounds black, therefore this must be a black-owned piece of land. Or the landowner here, the name sounds white, so this must be a white piece of land. Now now for the layman, the regular person on the street, you might think, oh, well, some names are very clearly a black person, some names are very clearly white. But then the more you think about it, the more examples come up of black people with names that are indistinguishable from a white person's name. For example, Benny McCarthy from Bafana Bafana, the ex-football player. What's Benny McCarthy's race? Or Des van Rooyen, the previous Minister of Finance. What race is Des van Rooyen? Oh, he's black. Oh, that name doesn't sound black. What's Benny McCarthy's race? Oh, it sounds white, that name. No, he's black. So already that whole methodology starts falling apart, and it starts looking a lot less like a scientific study and a lot more like to be very polite. The most polite way I can describe it is they made an educated guess. So not completely random, but they kind of just went on, there's minimal basis that we can rely on, but that's good enough. So they made
that is very
guess.
polite. I would describe it as something different, but yes, let's be polite.
Yeah. So that's one of the first major flaws. And then another flaw, and this really, when I read this as well, the further you read, it just becomes worse and worse. Then you look into what type of land did they include in their racial calculations when they said, oh, 72% is this and 30% is this racial group and this racial group is this percentage. Well, they looked at individual title deeds that you could racially classify. So they looked at pieces of land that are individually listed or individually owned as a title deed, and where there is some form of record that shows you the race of that person. That information exists, but it's a very small amount of information. It's just about 30% of the land in South Africa you can pinpoint in that way. That's 30% out of 122 million hectares. But what did the real devil is in the details, in what they excluded, not what they included. So what did they exclude when they were calculating who owns the land? Well, they excluded trusts, they excluded companies, and they excluded community-based organizations or communal land. Now, anyone in South...
like a crazy amount of land, though.
It's 70% of the land. Only 30% of the land they could racially classify. So the other 70% is what they ignored.
Wow.
So, for example, let's give some examples. So firstly, I think most South Africans know that Black South Africans disproportionately own land that is communally owned rather than individually owned. It is a disproportionate phenomenon. So that already skews the information. If you're just going to conveniently leave out communally owned land when you're trying to determine which race group owns how much land, that's already a major red flag. But then also, let me give you two examples that really just blow up this entire audit. The Inkonyama Trust, 2.8 million hectares of land, a third or 30% of the entire KwaZulu-Natal. It's communally owned land, so it wasn't factored into the calculations of the audit. We all know that the like 99%, if not 100% of people who live on Inkonyama Trust land are Black, but it's just when the audit tried to determine who owns what race or group owns how much land, let's just ignore 30% of KwaZulu-Natal. That's like 100% Black people living there. That's the first one. Second example, Pala Pala. Oh, infamous Pala Pala. So Ramaphosa, clearly a piece of Black-owned land, 4,500 hectares, a massive, massive farm. Was that factored into the audit? No, because it's in a trust, and all land in a trust, you can't racially profile. So no, that's also part of the 70% that was ignored. So it's like that old saying of, if you torture the statistics long enough and hard enough, that'll tell you anything you want to hear. It's literally, they just looked at the statistics. They're like, okay, we need to cut this out. If you cut this out and this out and this out and this out, if you cut out 70% of the land in South Africa, you get to a politically convenient answer of 72% is owned by white people.
Yeah. I mean, what you're describing here is perfect in terms of yesterday, the Common Sense also released a report about share ownership, like who actually owns the wealth in this country. And turns out almost 70% of all the shares on the JSE is owned by Black people, right? And this is the two main prevailing lies that have enabled the ANC's transformation agenda. Whites own all of the land, whites own the wealth. And so we must transform because we have to stop this. So then, if all of this is so flawed, how much land does white people actually own in South Africa?
So we don't know. It's not, you can't determine it. But let's say for argument that I already described all the flaws of the land audit, but let's say the land audit was done perfectly. Let's say all of their numbers are 100% like scientifically correct. The number then of white-owned land is much closer to 21%, according to their own calculations, than 72%. So that's the reality. The first little footnote or disclaimer that I have to put in is that we simply don't know who owns a vast majority of South Africa's land. We can't racially profile it. The information doesn't exist. But the closest thing we can get to an answer would be to treat the land audit, the 2017 land audit, as perfect, where its methodology was perfect. And even then, the answer of how much land in South Africa is owned by white people is closer to 21% than 72%. That's a major downgrade.
I saw this picture. I believe it is from the report because it looked very familiar to me. But I saw this picture of different maps of South Africa, arable land, non-arable land, rainfall, all the rest of it, that highlights, from what I could tell, the vast majority of white farms are not really in the perfect quote-unquote locations. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'll send you the link right now over DM. So this was another point that we made in our report that's very, very important. And that is the fact that the land audit of 2017 completely ignores agricultural potential. So it just looks at surface area. But as anyone knows that has traveled South Africa is a very dry and desertous place. But it gets even worse if you look at the real statistics. So I think very few people know that only 26.4% of South Africa's land is considered arable, so suitable for crops, less than a third. South Africa is an incredibly dry place. Like 55% of the country is just literal desert, like classified as desert, more than half of the country. And then you look at, for example, the fact that the Northern Cape, which is like a third of the entire country, I think it's 30.5%, the surface of South Africa. It's the largest province by far. The second largest province is the Eastern Cape at 13.8%. Like the Northern Cape is just massive. But nobody lives there because the Northern Cape is largely a desert. But the Northern Cape and the desert and arid parts of South Africa, the dry parts of South Africa, are where the majority of white-owned land is located. The white-owned land that you can actually prove is white-owned. That land is in the desert and dry areas of South Africa, primarily in the Northern Cape specifically. Because if you visited the Northern Cape, you'll know the Northern Cape is full of sheep farms. But for a sheep farm in the Northern Cape, you need a farm the size of a small European country to make 10 sheep fat. That's the reality.
Yeah, in Afrikaans we call it draakkrag. I don't know exactly what the English is for it.
It's I don't know. I think the closest English would be grazing capacity.
Yeah. So
how many animals can you graze on a piece of land?
Yeah, and the Northern Cape is notoriously terrible because there's bushes. It's like there's nothing there.
Like you can, the vast majority of agriculture there is grazing, but not because it's fantastic for grazing. It's the only thing you can do there, and you need massive amounts of land just to make a few animals look like that you can get some chops from them. But I think that's the thing.
Sorry, Ernst, just something that needs to be understood also is not all land is equal.
Right.
The ANC makes it seem like land is prosperity and value is just in the land. But you and I both know, if I have a kilometer by kilometer piece of land with oil on it, that is going to be far more valuable than you with 10,000 kilometers of land with nothing on it.
Right. And that's the land audit completely just ignores that. It just looks at surface area. It treats 1 hectare of Kalahari Desert as the same as 1 hectare of like prime grazing area in KwaZulu-Natal. So that's the thing about the Northern Cape that needs to be understood. is that the Northern Cape, because it's so big, because it's such a big province, it takes up such a large proportion of South Africa's surface area, and also the a very large proportion of white farms are there. It skews the land ownership statistics even more, because you've got these massive farms, and if you look at them just numbers wise, people say, well, look at all these big white owned farms here. This doesn't look right. But then you go visit those farms and you walk around there and you're like, well, it's been a while since I've seen anything green. What's going on here? And I always challenge people in the land debate. I tell them, my homework for you tonight is to go to Google Earth and go look at satellite imagery of the Northern Cape. Go look at satellite imagery of Calvinia, of Beaufort West. Look at how the Northern Cape looks from space. It looks like the surface of Mars. There's nothing there. There's like no green there. It's just red and brown rocks. There's no trees. There's nothing. But there's people farming there. There are people that have been farming there for generations. Yeah, super dry.
It's super dry. When we moved to Cape Town, we slept in Beaufort West at a hotel there. And there's these big signs everywhere. Please use water sparingly, because they have so little of it.
Yeah. And like I said, you don't even have to visit there. You can just look at some satellite images, and it genuinely looks, I could fool people and tell people these are the latest like SpaceX photographs of Mars, and people will believe it because that's how it looks there. But once again, politicians and people that support these types of radical policies like expropriation without compensation have never visited the Northern Cape. They just look at raw numbers and say, well, there's all these big farms here. We think we should be redistributing them because people are hungry for these types of farms. I'm just going to tell you now, nobody is hungry to go farm in the Northern Cape. Not white, not black, nobody. The only people who want to farm in the Northern Cape are the ones who have been farming there for generations and know how to make it work. That is a very special breed of person. There's only a handful of people that can make a success of a farm in the Karoo or in the Kalahari. And that's something that needs to be celebrated, not something that needs to be attacked or villainized. Like, these are some of the most hardcore farmers in the world. These are some of the best farmers in the world, because they're literally, as I said, they're literally farming on the surface of Mars.
And we are seeing a slow but steady increase in international players making a play for the farmers in South Africa. You know, Russia has this sort of relocation idea where they want to get South African farmers to come farm there. America is making a giant play for the farmers of South Africa to go and farm there. And the harder the government makes it for farmers to farm here, the easier it is for a farmer to eventually just say, well, what's the point? You know, I am consistently fighting off these claims to my land. The government's consistently trying to figure out how to blame me for all of the problems. And once they go, because this is the thing that, you know, we mentioned different land, not all land is equal, but there is another reality that no one ever seems to want to discuss. Land in and of itself is of zero value. Like, you could give me a piece of land on the most arable land on earth, and I would still not know how to farm on it, because I'm not a farmer. I don't know how to farm, right? It's only easy for people who've only ever watched Clarkson's farm. If you go speak to an actual farmer, there's so much that goes into it. And that's generational knowledge that's built up, right? Yeah. But okay, so to get back to the land issue. So no, you can respond, please.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to quickly say, often a lot of these farms only become productive after like 3 generations. The first generation is just there to like tame the land. They are pulling out trees, moving stones, plowing the land like virgin land for the first time. This is the toughest part of the whole process. The second generation kind of builds on the shoulders of the previous generation, but it's still tough going. It's not really profitable yet. A lot of farms only really become profitable after 3 generations, and that's another thing that's completely ignored by by politicians. And I mean, the other last fact that I just wanted to give you, maybe you can put some of those maps on the screen that I DM'd to you. so another thing that I found during this research was that the majority of white-owned land is in the low rainfall parts of South Africa, but the majority of black-owned land is in the high rainfall parts of South Africa. And the other thing also that needs to be taken into account is that in many of these provinces, many of the provinces in South Africa, a very large proportion of agricultural potential is already in black hands. There's already been a large surge in new commercial black farmers, not due to the help of the government, but due to their own private acquisition of land. I have those statistics here as well. Just have to check here about how many farms have been bought by private citizens, black-owned farms in South Africa, with no help from the state at all. I'll get that statistic here now, but that's another fact that's just completely ignored, is the fact that a lot of land in South Africa is already in black hands, and it's not the government that gave them that land. They bought it with their own hard-earned cash.
Mm. But you do sort of get this idea wherever you look. So I mentioned the Truth Report's analysis of the JSE, and I mean 70%, almost 70%, 66.55% of all of the shares on the JSE is owned by broad black people, right? So BEE black, which is Indian, colored, and black people. And you look around you and you know for a fact 60% of black people don't own shares on the JSE. That's just not the case. There's a small minority of people that have made a success in this new South Africa. I know, for example, and I won't say too much, but I have family that farms in Limpopo. And I know for a fact that there are farms that are government sponsored that make no profit whatsoever. In fact, their only job is to sell their goods at below market price in order to hurt the farmers around it, because the government subsidizes the entire farm. So all they have to show is that they're growing a bunch of stuff and then selling that stuff. They don't have to show profit. The government doesn't care whether they show profit. And so a lot of the farmers around these farms are starting to suffer because all the Zimbabwe trucks, all of the Mozambique trucks, everything stops at this government farm because they're buying, citrus, for example, at half the market price. Because this guy doesn't care.
But I mean, there you have the maps now on the screen. I mean, that the land debate in South Africa is told, or a better picture of the land debate is given through multiple maps rather than one. So I mean, the map number one is arable land. It's literally like someone drew like a ruler through South Africa. Then grazing land as well, and look at rainfall there, and then population density, where black South Africans live, and then where Afrikaans South Africans live. Now, I saw some people confuse the two last maps as saying that all the black South Africans just live where it's green, and all the white South Africans, or Afrikaans South Africans rather, just live where it's green. No, that's not what it shows. That is an ethnographic map that shows you percentage. So dark green is almost 100% of people living there are Afrikaans. A percentage, not, but there were literally people when I've made this post that said, I know a black person that lives in that green area. Why is it dark green? Like, because he's 0.00001% of the population. Those are two ethnographic percentage maps, and that's very important. So if you were able to overlay all of those maps, they tell a story. The vast majority of Afrikaans speaking South Africans live in the worst agricultural land in the country, and it's not even close.
Yeah. I think that's an important point. It's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on, is to be able to discuss this. I saw some people in chat also make the point of how much foreign land, China is known for buying up land. So that's going to be a whole debate that we're going to have in about the next decade or so. Have anyone, to your knowledge, Ernst, done a large meta study into the success rates of farms that's been reclaimed, either through obviously
Mm,
expropriation with compensation.
right.
What is the average success rate? Do we know?
Yeah. So we don't know. There hasn't been a study into all farms that have been successfully claimed. I mean, there are some statistics from the government that we do have, and I think it's important that we acknowledge it's statistics from the government because it already paints a very bleak picture, and they have no incentive to publish statistics that paint a bleak picture. So it has to be really bad if they are forced to publish these statistics. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So let's look at some of the statistics we do have. So, according to the Ministry of Land Reform and Rural Development, almost 90% of successful land claimants chose money instead of the land. So there's been thousands of land claims for the past 30 years, and 90% of those who successfully claimed land, they brought proof and showed that we were dispossessed under the previous regime. As part of the restitution process, you then get your land back, and the people that did live there beforehand get paid fair compensation. They don't just get kicked off the land, but that's a different part of the conversation. But that's a critical point. If there's this hunger for land, why are 90% of people don't want the land? It's like it's like you sitting around a table and someone claims this table is very hungry, and you put some food on the table, and the majority of people around the table say, I'll take the money rather than the food. It's okay, I'm not that hungry. That's the same for the hunger for land. But we do have some statistics regarding land reform projects. So most government land reform projects fail, and we have these statistics because the government has to keep these statistics. Unfortunately, your original question of all land claims that have been done, there has not been a study. The government has no obligation to track what happens to these farms after land claims. So maybe someone should do that study. Maybe Afriforum should do that study in the future. But the statistics we do have is that, for example, in 2020, the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development revealed that nearly 900 state-owned farms were either underutilized or not used at all. So that's farms for the purpose of land reform, 900 farms that are just not being used. And then also at the expense of 12 billion rand between 2006 and 2022 that was spent on acquiring farms for land reform as part of the proactive land reform strategy by the government. And the government's own statistics show that 75% of those farms have failed. So those are some of the statistics we do have. So at the moment, land reform in the government's hands has around a 75% failure rate. It's going to go a little bit up, a little bit down, depending on where you look. But that's from based on the statistics we do have. That's what it's showing. And I want to emphasize once again, this is not Afriforum statistics. This is not Afriforum giving you these statistics. These are the government statistics. We are literally quoting the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. That's before the Minister of Agriculture became a separate thing under the GNU. But so these, according to the government's own statistics, 75% of their land reform projects fail.
And when you think about it, 12 billion rand, that is a significant amount of money that has been lost in the immediate term. And then you think about the economic value that's been lost because those farms are obviously not participating in the economy at all.
Yeah.
Like how many jobs have gone away as a result of these things? Because all of this have knock-on effects, right? Like this is gonna continuously get worse, especially as they're now pushing for no compensation. Or excuse me, compensation, but compensation can also be null.
Right. So let me just give you, because we are throwing around a lot of big numbers, and I myself, I will be the first guy to admit I sometimes struggle to see in my mind's eye how big a number really is. So just give the audience an idea. 12 billion rand. If you gave the Solidarity Movement 12 billion rand, we could have built 40 Soltech campuses. 40. We could have built 3 Soltech campuses per province.
And we kind of need that.
No.
Skills development would be, would go an incredibly long way. to solving almost all.
But sometimes you need to put these numbers into perspective, because the government is so wasteful. The government is so inefficient. The government is so corrupt that these numbers get so big, people can't fathom it anymore. It doesn't make sense to them. Like it gets to a point where you can't imagine it. Like, for example, another one, when we were talking earlier about how much land do different entities own, we didn't even start talking about how much land the government owns. The government is the largest landowner in South Africa. The government owns between 25 and 28 million hectares of land. That's about 21 to 25% of the surface area of South Africa. Now, people will say, how much is 25 million hectares really? I mean, I also struggle to see it. Let's look at what country is that big. That's the entire United Kingdom. So the South African government owns so much land that they own a land mass the size of the entire United Kingdom, and they want the power to take more land. That's the bizarre state of affairs where we find ourselves.
And I mean, it should be mentioned, it's not a case of when these land claims go through, the people who now get the farm oftentimes don't get the rights. So the deeds isn't necessarily signed over, which is actually the biggest problem, because farming requires debt. You have to be able to go to a bank, but now you go to the bank and say, by the way, I want money to farm. And the bank goes, well, what can we take if you can't pay? So I don't own anything, so you can't take anything.
And you're not happy either.
Yeah, you own nothing and you're not happy, which is, I guess exactly how it ought to be.
But it comes back to that. It comes back full circle to that point that we were talking about at the beginning of the episode of state dependence. The ANC-led government wants to give people 30-year leases on land rather than actually have them own that land, because owning land makes you less dependent on the government. Being a landowner actually makes you state proof to a large extent, and the government doesn't want that. They want you, as we established earlier, they want you maximally dependent on them, so that they can tell you whatever they want you to do, and you can't protest, because if you protest, they can shut down your entire life.
This brings me to a question that I wanted to ask in the beginning as well, but we sort of got sidetracked. Where is the Zulu Forum, Xhosa Forum? Why do these organizations not exist?
So the thing to understand about Afriforum is that it took 20 years for us to get to the point where we are now. The organization was founded in 2006. And I mean, Afriforum, the founders of Afriforum were ahead of the curve, in the sense that we didn't start building Afriforum when we saw that things were going wrong. The founders of Afriforum predicted things were going to go wrong, so they started building the ark before the storm hit. It wasn't the storm that hit that inspired the building of Afriforum, to speak metaphorically. So when it comes to why aren't there more organizations like Afriforum, or maybe some of them are in their early stages, but they're building after the storm has already hit, so that makes it a lot more difficult. And the other thing is, I don't think a lot of people in South Africa have woken up to the fact that you can think outside of this party politics paradigm. You are not just dependent on the outcome of elections. You can actually state-proof your community and just do things outside of the party politics paradigm. You don't have to be dependent on politicians. So I think that still needs to sink in for more people to emulate what we do. But the Solidarity Movement and Afriforum is 100% open source. So we get people, we have meetings with people constantly that want to do what we do, build their own version of Afriforum or the Solidarity Movement, and we give them the blueprint. We just tell them, well, we don't fund anyone, we just fund ourselves, but we will give you the blueprint and you can start building it for yourself. And we've had many such good examples of intercultural cooperation where organizations like Afriforum are sprouting up in other communities. But it's still early days, seeing as I think people are only waking up now to the fact that party politics might not save you.
Yeah, I said this once during a live stream. If you really want to see the ANC break down into tiers, you set up a Urania without the limitation of race. So no just white people, but they must be conservative, and they must be Christian. Because
Mm.
that all alone, I believe, will actually have a super success rate. If you just have those two. And I want to see more organizations like Afriforum, because imagine what could happen if you have Zulu Forum,
Yeah.
Afriforum, Xhosa Forum, all taking hands to fix their own communities, working
Yeah.
together to build correspondence and cooperation between different communities. We could make this country into a functional country without the government.
And I'll never forget this. Many times when I'm in an interview, sometimes if I'm on a panel, there will be some like black supremacist or someone there, and he'll be like, "We just need to build a Black Afriforum," and I'll look him straight in the eyes. I'm like, "Do it, like do it. Don't threaten me with a
Please.
good time." Like, build more Afriforums in your community as well. I want to see it. Like, I encourage you to do it. Go home after this panel discussion or after this interview and make it your mission to do what Afriforum does, to build your own Afriforum. Like, absolutely, I can't encourage you enough to do it. And it completely like confuses them. It discombobulates them. They don't know how to react because they thought I was gonna like throw my toys out of the cot and say like, no, only Afriforum can do what Afriforum does. Like, I don't want you to give us competition or create another Afriforum, like some type of rant that he wanted me to go on. And my answer is always just like, do it. Like, I'm not even joking, do it.
But I think this is a general misconception that a lot of people have about Afrikaners generally. I was watching this morning, there's a video clip of what's his name, our new ambassador to America,
Rolf Meyer, yeah.
Rolf Meyer. And he says there's a misconception about when apartheid started in South Africa. It started in 1652, because the Europeans arrived here with a superiority complex. And it's like, no, they didn't. Like, there is so many examples of Afrikaners and Zulus working together. Yes,
Right.
there's also examples of them being at war with each other, but then again, working together right after the war. So many examples of Afrikaners and Black tribes working together.
Signing treaties, building strong relationships, building a cooperative relationship. I mean, the history is not just conflict. Our history in South Africa is filled with both conflict and cooperation. It's incredibly complex. I mean, visit the Voortrekker Monument. Look at what history is depicted there on the inside of the monument. Not just the conflicts, the cooperation is depicted there as well. The treaties that were signed, the alliances that were made, the assistance that was given. That's also a very important part of the story.
Yeah. And I think this is the misconception. There's a lot of Black South Africans, but also white South Africans that have this idea that white Afrikaners just want to take care of themselves, and they can't wait to get back to apartheid. When in reality, the vast majority of Afrikaners that I know have no interest in apartheid. They have an interest in living in safe, functional societies. And for everyone, because I'm not safe in my community if the community next door is decrepit. Right? So it would work if the township is flourishing that's next door, because then we're not going to be stealing each other's stuff. We're not going to be attacking each other. And we're more than happy to help. Where I draw the line, at least from myself, and you can say, what your opinion is, I'm not giving you stuff. If help is what you need in order, I should train you, I should teach you, no problem. But if you say, no, give me, I'm like, no, because you're not going to appreciate it if it's given to you.
And it's this other bizarre argument that I've heard from the people that attack Afriforum. A lot of these not ethno-nationalists but ethno-masochists. They say Afriforum, we know Afriforum's agenda is to want to destroy South Africa. Afriforum wants to see South Africa destroyed and people suffer in South Africa. And I just look at them and I'm like, are you like psychopathic? I live here. Why would I want South Africa to be destroyed? The place that I live, that I'm raising my children in. Why would I want to destroy the future of the peoples of South Africa? Why would I want to make this place a worse place if I live here? Like your argument doesn't make sense. I have skin in the game, and often the people making that argument are sitting in London, they're sitting in Los Angeles, they're sitting in Washington. There are a bunch of expats, often people that are living on a lot of leftists living abroad, and they attack Afriforum. The other day there was one of these. I think it was, what's his name? Adam Abib, sitting in London, an academic that fled South Africa because of the results of the policies that he supports, the destruction that was done by the policies he supports. He fled to London and to go live there, and then he started attacking Afriforum as traitorous. And I asked them a simple question, because I asked them, firstly, how's London, Adam? And he said, oh, London's fantastic. Sometimes the weather is nice and hot and it feels like home. And then my follow-up question to him was, why do you not live in the place that you consider home, but all the people you trash and smear as traitors live and build in the place you consider home? Like, why are all these evil people that allegedly hate South Africa and all South Africans living in South Africa, while you, who allegedly love South Africa and you're this massive patriot, you're sitting in London? Why is that? And he didn't respond. He was very quick to respond until I asked that question. Then he stopped.
Yeah, there's another guy who does the same. He has a YouTube channel, I believe, as well. I can't remember his name now, but he's like an old radio host or news guy. I was once on his platform and we got into a massive argument. But he's also one of these guys that defends the ANC, defends their decisions, believes in the redistribution of wealth. He lives in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you so desperately believe in these things, surely you will want to be a part of it, right? You would want your stuff to be redistributed as well. You believe so desperately in this fight.
So other people should be treated like second-class citizens, just not me.
Yes. I will go move to the white European countries where they won't take my stuff. Always,
it's the same with a lot of these Zimbabwean academics or Zimbabwean social media influencers that talk about how fantastic Mugabe is and how fantastic expropriation without compensation is. And then you check their profile and you say, oh, they live in Johannesburg. I'm like, why don't you live in utopia? Why don't you live in the paradise that Mugabe created allegedly? Why do you live in South Africa?
But I mean, that's the elitist problem. The Americans have the same problem. The British have the same problem. The people who oftentimes preach to the riffraff don't deal with the problems, right? So they can, it's these luxury beliefs that they can hold because they will never be affected by those problems. Speaking of beliefs that are held, let's talk about every single South African's best friend, Mr. Malema. Now, I think it's fair to say that you guys have had a personal beef with Mr. Malema for a while now.
I have a personal beef with anyone that wants to kill me and my children based on our identity. Call me a radical.
Yeah, I don't know why that would be such an issue for you.
Right.
But you made a video where you guys dove into the actual reality of the Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer song. Because apparently in South Africa, no one understands when you say kill someone, that kind of means kill someone. I don't know why in South Africa that doesn't work. I want to ask you first, and I know you're not a constitutional lawyer, but I need to ask this. How is it that, because you watched that trial of Julius Malema where you guys took him to court, and he is effectively openly saying that they'll eventually kill white people, right? But that isn't hate speech. The old flag, however, is hate speech. Like, what am I missing?
Yeah.
What am I not seeing?
What's happening here is that you're not possessed by ideology, and unfortunately, our courts have been infiltrated by ideology, meaning that reality is less important and is subordinate to what ideology tells you reality should be. So you rather view the world as you want it to be rather than as it is. So when a lot our court system is not lost, our court system still functions relatively well, but a large portion of it is under threat from ideological capture, and some parts of it have been ideologically captured. And I think that's a court case regarding the Kill the Boer court case is a clear example of that, of an ideologically driven judgment. But anyway, I mean, keeping farmers safe is not dependent on whether we could stop Julius Malema chanting "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer." It would have helped, but after that court case, Afriforum just decided, well, we just doubled our budget for farm security and organizing farmers. That's just going to have to be where our resources go into now. So that's what we did in the wake of it. But yeah, that video that you referenced, once again, it was simply just, as we said with the land statistics as well. Some people always confidently say, "Of course, it's just the metaphor. Kill the Boer is not real," and then not really a real call to violence. And then all you have to do is ask a follow-up question in regards to why is this then the case, or why is this the case? So what are some of those possible follow-up questions? Well, the first follow-up question I would ask is, if Kill the Boer is not a real call to violence, if it is just a metaphor, why, when Julius Malema was asked in court to pledge under oath that he will never call for the slaughtering of white people, he refused? If it's all just play metaphor, make believe, it's not real, then it must be the easiest thing in the world to under oath then say, well, of course I can promise that I will never call for the slaughtering of white people, because that's not what this chant is about. Well, no, he refused. He said, no, I won't do it. Okay, so you may call for the slaughtering of white people in the future. Got it. Second question, follow-up question that needs to be asked. If Kill the Boer has nothing to do with farm murders, why is it chanted at farm murder court cases? Like, why do the EFF show up at farm murder court cases when farm murder suspects are on trial and chant "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer" outside of the court? That doesn't make sense if it has nothing to do with farm murders. And then thirdly, the third thing the follow-up question that needs to be asked is that if it is just a metaphor, if it has nothing to do with real killing, why does Mr. Malema say that he is a revolutionary and the revolution demands killing? Is he now is he a schizophrenic? On the one side, he's like, no, nothing. Our mission is not to kill people. Violence is wrong. But on the other side, he's like, no, we have to kill. We must be willing to kill to get what we want. Yeah. I mean, the guy who says we must be willing to kill to get what we want, when he says "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer, shoot to kill," I take him literally. I believe him.
Yeah, I mean, it's safe to say that if someone says they're going to kill you, or they're singing about killing you, only a moron would go, I think they're just joking. Well, even if they are just joking, it would be nice to have a gun in case of emergency. Someone asked your Ichimaru, thank you so much for the question. He's asking if the extra budget is helping you guys win the war against state farm murders and attacks.
Against farm attacks, yes. So I just want to clarify that I don't want to give Afriforum all the credit. We do a lot of work, but I mean, I can't prove that all of our work is making the major difference. I think a lot of organizations and individuals are making a major difference. Afriforum is a major player. But what we've seen, the trend that we've seen, is that the amount of attacks, farm attacks, remain relatively the same, but the amount of murders in the past few years have gone down in some years. I think 2025 had a very low murder rate compared to other years, which indicates to me, I mean, this is not a scientific fact, but it does indicate to me that farmers are better prepared in ensuring that farm attacks don't result in farm murders. And that's a very positive development. So I would say, yes, the amount of budget and extra resources we've poured into ensuring farmers are safe, I would hope has played a major role in that trend. We will see if that trend continues, but that's from what I can see. I mean, it would be irresponsible and dishonest of me to now claim, yes, that is a direct correlation. I know for a fact that Afriforum is responsible for that decline, but it is a trend that I can point to and say, well, that does seem to be a positive trend that correlates with our increase in our focus on farm security.
Yeah. Just to get back to Malema, and Amma, I will ask that question, although I could answer that question for you because you just need to follow Kali Krill's X account to know what that answer is. But nevertheless, on to Malema again. Here is the thing that I think speaks most violently to all of it. If this was just a struggle song, right? The first question that needs to be asked is, who is the struggle against? The struggle now surely is against the ANC, because they're the ones in power now. So singing "Kill the Bird, Kill the Farmer," we don't have political power. So what exactly are we supposed to do? Moreover, the Americans, of all the things that the Americans asked the ANC to do, the easiest one was just condemn the song. They didn't say make the song illegal, arrest Julius Malema. None of that. They just asked the ANC to condemn the song. And that would literally be Cyril Ramaphosa standing in front of the cameras and saying, I condemn Kill the Bird, Kill the Farmer. And he
in very simple language, they would just take him saying the chant is wrong.
Yeah.
Like that's it. That's it.
He could even cross his fingers behind his back if he wanted to.
Yeah.
He just needs to say that. Why wouldn't he say that?
Yeah. Because he endorses it clearly. I mean, he defends the chant. He sees the chant as nothing wrong with it. He will hide behind and say, well, I don't chant it. Okay, fine. Yeah, I'm not a murderer, but I can tell you murder is wrong. Like I can stand here and tell you, yeah, don't murder people. Like the fact that I'm not murdering people is not proof that I don't either view murder as right or wrong. I have to tell you, I don't support murder. I don't support this thing. I see it as wrong. And why can't Cyril Ramaphosa do that? Like, why can't he just, like you said, he could even just play the politician role and say something he doesn't mean and lie, but he can't even do that. He can't bring himself to say, I believe this chant is wrong. I condemn it as wrong. The courts, it's not illegal based on the court decision. He can say that. He can put that little caveat there, but he can easily say, I believe it is wrong. It is immoral. For example, there are many things in South Africa that are not illegal, but that are wrong, that are immoral, but that are not against the law. So, that's a stupid example, but I mean, being a terrible friend is wrong. It's not illegal. Like I can tell you right now, don't be a bad friend, or don't be a bad husband, or don't be a bad person. Like that doesn't mean, just because it's not illegal doesn't mean you can't take a moral stand.
Yeah. I think that this is, so the way I look at it is from first principles. We have a problem with violence on farms, right? That is clear as day for anyone that knows how to do per capita reading. Of course, the left don't know what per capita means, so that doesn't work for them. But anyone with per capita, I mean, so I don't know what the most recent figures is, and I'm really looking forward to Lex Libertas's research into this. But from my understanding, the last sort of paper that I ever saw on it, and I can't remember the exact citation now, but was something like 108 out of 100,000 is the murder rate for Afrikaner farmers in South Africa. 108 out of 100,000. The general population is something like 45 or 48 out of 100,000. So it's double the murder rate of the normal population. Even the rural population, I think, is 80 out of 100,000, which makes it so much, because if it was just violence in the rural areas, there are about 900 and something, almost a million. It's almost a million rural farm workers, I think, in the country that live on farms versus 30,000 white farmers. So if it was just people wanting to kill, surely there's far more people that you can just kill, on the farm worker side of things. but even their rates is far lower than the farmers themselves. So there is that problem. Now you have a song. If the song, whether the song is connected to the killings or not, doesn't matter. The song is literally about killing those people. And then you have a government that seems more interested in denying that the problem exists than solving it, which to me, from first principles, suggests there's a connection here.
Hmm.
Something must connect.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's my logic goes even more simple than that. My logic is just there is a high profile politician chanting about a certain group that needs to be murdered, and that group is being murdered in a brutal fashion, oftentimes involving torture, and oftentimes nothing being stolen. That's enough for me to see the clear picture.
Yeah, I agree with you. So let's do Ama's question here. Afriforum's investment into BEE that ended in, was it 2016 or 2017 or maybe earlier.
That's that News 24 expose that just blew up in their faces. I mean, the whole quote unquote scandal is that Afriforum, some of Afriforum's money was invested through a BEE compliant firm. Now, I mean, I'm going to drop a bombshell as well here. I'm a major hypocrite. I drink water from the tap, and the municipality is BEE compliant as well. So that makes me a massive hypocrite on BEE. I can't oppose BEE because I drink tap water. I mean,
you heard it here first, guys.
I mean, not in any way doing business or paying for a service or investing money without at some point doing that through a firm or getting in contact with a firm that is BEE compliant is impossible in South Africa. I mean, it's literally all these firms are being mandated to be BEE compliant. Otherwise, they're going to get serious fines and other penalties from the state. So, of course, you're going to get BEE compliance everywhere from a lot of these firms. It's a different point, but what a lot of them are doing, they're just not simply reporting their BEE compliance anymore. A very large proportion of these firms, which I mean, you should not be complying with malicious discriminatory laws. But I mean, just to quickly get back to that point, it's such a nothing burger, the fact that, oh, wow, you did business with a firm that is BEE compliant. Well, then we're all, none of us can then criticize BEE. Then none of us can, because all of us on a regular basis are going to at some point encounter a firm or do business with an organization, a company that is BEE compliant, like literally like a bank or Checkers or whatever. Like all of these major companies are BEE compliant. Like it's the water race-based laws is the water we swim in South Africa. In Afrikaans, we call it rasmalheid.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, if the criteria is that we should not be doing business, and FYI, I think both my and Ernst's official position is that companies should completely reject BEE.
Just ignore it. Say, I'm not going to discriminate based on race. You can take a hike.
Yeah, but now the question becomes, if the argument is you can't support companies that are BEE compliant, where are you buying your food?
Yeah.
Right. Now, because all of them are BEE compliant across the board. The fuel that you put in your car, all of those companies are BEE compliant. The electricity that you use, Eskom is majorly BEE compliant. So ultimately, there are certain things that we have to begrudgingly accept. And yes, to some extent, that probably does make you, in the most literal reading of it, hypocritical because, but there's also the argument to be made. If I use that money to then help fight that, that asinine and archaic law, then I'm putting the evil to work against itself.
Yeah.
In a way, right?
Yeah. So no, it was just an absolute reach, and it was quite funny the way that it never gained traction. The moment that it was published, I went to so I know someone who has a News 24 subscription, and I asked them, can you just send me some screenshots of the comment section under this piece? And the comment section was literally just people calling out News 24, telling them, like, what are you doing? Like, this is a non-story. How is this your main story on a Sunday? What am I paying for? And the important piece of context here is you can only leave a comment under a News 24 story if you're a paid subscriber. So this brutal, like, dismantling of News 24 is being done by their own subscribers, not by some like conspiracy or like Afriforum bots or whatever. These are people that are paying News 24 per month. I would argue if you're paying News 24, you're paying extra tax, but I mean, that's a different story. I think you're just paying a government firm. But I mean, if you willingly want to pay extra tax, if you willingly want to pay like a media levy, I mean, sure, you can impose that levy on yourself. I'm not going to do it. But anyway, the point is, even their own paying subscribers were like, this is not it, boss.
Yeah, I mean, I am subscribed to News 24 because, well, I have to make videos about stuff that they cover, and 90% of the coverage that I do give them is just calling out all the mistakes that they've made in their coverage of things. But I'll say, reading through that article, the communist tricks was incredible. So the communists have this thing, especially the media at the moment with Afriforum. They'll make a bunch of accusations that's completely unrelated to Afriforum, right? So they did this in this article as well. A bunch of accusations, stuff that happens in South Africa. And then right after that, they'll talk about Afriforum. Now, in the mind of the reader, if all of these accusations just happened, Afriforum must be the one that's guilty of it. But then they do go on to explain how Afriforum isn't actually guilty of it. They couldn't find any evidence of those things being the case. Even the BE story, it was like, but Afriforum has since dropped that company. And now Afriforum is with a different company. And it's just like, wow, you guys genuinely, you reached so far. Especially considering the fact that I think most of this information was actually Kali Kriel that handed it over to them. Like, this wasn't an expose.
No, a lot of this information is literally just on our website. They just turned a tab on our website into an article.
I find it fascinating, and I guess that will be my final question to you, because I've already kept you busy for almost 2 hours. Why now? Why do we see this incredible increase? Because you've always been attacked. But as we spoke about in the beginning, do you think that there's a fear starting to rise in the mind of the leftist that they think they may legitimately be busy losing the war?
So I think there's two elements to this. On the one side, there's a direct correlation between how effective Afriforum is at accomplishing our mission and how intensely we are attacked. It really comes back full circle to what I said earlier. Our mission is to make people state proof. Our mission is to make people less dependent on the government. So the more successful we are in that mission, the more intensely we are attacked, and we are increasingly successful in that mission. So of course the attacks continue, or the attacks escalate. The other thing also is what happened in 2025, where the South African government, the ANC-led South African government, is under incredible pressure from the United States to change course in regards to many of its racially discriminatory policies, its human rights violations, its farm murder denialism, and the like. And all of that pressure, the only way they can get out of that pressure in some way is to find a scapegoat. Because in the end, all of the issues that the United States identified as problems, the racially discriminatory laws, farm murders, the corruption, all of these different, the expropriation without compensation, all of these issues that were identified were issues that are the ANC's fault. Meaning that if they don't find a scapegoat, they're just going to be sat there not with an answer. So they did what any politician would do, and that is deflect blame onto a scapegoat. And Afriforum is a very effective or easy scapegoat, because already what Afriforum does is pretty much undermine the government's welfare industrial complex. We are undermining the national democratic revolution. So already it's easy for them to frame Afriforum as an enemy, because we are literally trying to ensure that they don't have the power to expropriate land without compensation, that they stop discriminating against people based on their identity, that they stop with their cowardice in not condemning chants for the murder of their citizens. So Afriforum was the logical scapegoat that they were going to use, because they had to. They had no choice but to find a scapegoat. Otherwise, the spotlight would have been on them and solely on them, and they would have no answer to these challenges being given to them by the Trump administration. I mean, that was the whole theme of Dim the Lights. Dim the Lights was just the South African government seeing the chickens come home to roost, and they were being confronted in front of the whole world with the bitter fruits of their own corruption and their own immoral policies, and they didn't have an answer. Donald Trump literally just locked them in a room and played a video, a movie to them of all their failure and all their evil.
To this day, I think that will go down in history as the moment that the entire machinery of oppression in South Africa was exposed, because you had Cyril sitting there sort of in his normal, Cyril is the only president in the world that he's always the last to find out about everything that happens. He never knows what's going on. You had John Steenhuisen, the official opposition, but now part of the government, standing there also just sort of, and I find it fascinating. Someone actually sent me a message of a guy who compiled, I think it's like 15 articles over the last 4 years prior to the formation of the GNU, where John Steenhuisen says that farm murders is a serious issue in South Africa.
And expropriation without compensation is a serious threat.
Yeah. I mean, in the White House, he's like, I don't even know, farmer? Do we have farmers in South Africa? This is new. I have no idea what this man is talking about. Everyone's safe and sound. So it just exposed everything.
And you forgot his most important title, and that is Cyril's White Minister of Agriculture. And like literally, Cyril was like, "Look at this guy. Look at his skin color. He's my white minister. Have you seen his white? Look at him. Like, look at the world. Look at him. There can't be anything happening to white South Africans if I have a white minister. I mean, that's impossible." It's absolutely like as impossible as a square circle that there could be horrific farm murders in my country, and my government threatens the white citizens of my country of expropriation without compensation on a regular basis. That can't be, because I have a white minister. Have you noticed he's white?
Yeah. And I mean, Rupert standing there saying he sleeps with his doors open. Have you ever been to Rupert's farm? You can't say foot on there. There's private security everywhere. Like, of course, I would keep my door open as well if there's a security guard right outside the door. Like, yeah, the guy with a gun beats the piece of wood. But it exposed everything. I want to I just thought of something else that I wanted to ask you. Since you guys are in the meetings, you have a lot more access than what I do. Then I know you wanted to invite me to an Afriforum event, and I hate the fact. I always love living in Cape Town, but when you sent me that DM, I was like, man, I wish I still lived in Gauteng, because I really would have loved to go. But my question is, do you get the sense that the Americans are starting to run out of patience? Is that sort of, do you get that sense, or do you just
I get that sense, and I get the sense that the ANC is not going to do anything except double down, and unfortunately then Afriforum and the Solidarity Movement have tried everything we can to defuse this diplomatic crisis that's been going on for more than a year now, because it hurts regular South Africans, it hurts the country. But at the end of the day, if the ANC does not want to come to the negotiating table and compromise on and I have to emphasize this, very reasonable demands, then it's on them. It's their extremism is going to be the thing that hurts South Africa. I mean, let's look at some of the demands. So, stop racially discriminating against people based on their skin color. Condemn a chant about murdering people in your country based on their identity. Stop with threatening your citizens that you're going to take their property without compensation. and categorize farm murders as a priority crime, a unique crime that deserves a unique counter strategy. What is extreme or radical about that? It's the most vanilla, milquetoast, like reasonable demands. And the ANC is like, that this is outrageous. This is like the most extreme demands you can ask of us. Oh yeah, we know you're race obsessed, but I mean, come on, man. I mean, have some like, just have some like little bit of integrity. We're like, where you're not as exposed in front of the whole world, where someone tells you, can you condemn this guy telling people that they should murder their fellow citizens based on their skin color? And the ANC is like, no, I can't do that. That's too far. Like, you're pushing your luck.
Yeah. I mean, it would be similar to someone saying, can you condemn what Adolf Hitler was doing? And I'm going, I'm not German, so
if you asked me, like, Ernst, can you pledge that you will never use your Afriforum platform to call for the murder of black people? And I start squirming in my seat, and I'm like, well,
I can't tell the future.
I can't tell. I can't guarantee the future. I'm like, wow. Like, I mean, once you put it like that, it starts becoming as clear how absurd this whole situation is.
But in the interest of people making articles, Ernst, can you guarantee that as Afriforum you will never call for the death and murder of black people?
I can go one further. I can guarantee as Afriforum and as Ernst in a personal individual capacity that I promise I will never call for the slaughtering of South Africans based on their skin color, black or white. I mean, that's
how hard was that? It's interesting and fascinating what happens when you actually don't want to do something. How easy it is to just say, I don't want to do that. So that's perfectly fine. Ernst, there's a final question here that we can probably just a yes or no, and if you want to, build on it a little bit. But where do you see South Africa politically in the next 5 years? Do you think self-determination is possible?
What was that? There's this funny saying from Mark Twain who said, making predictions is very difficult, especially about the future. But when it comes to specifically the future of South Africa, I can't tell you what it's going to look like in 5 years, but I can tell you two trends that I am quite certain are going to continue. State capacity decay is going to continue. The government is not going to get a handle on the key issues affecting South Africa. And then secondly, state proofing is going to increase dramatically in response to that failure. So the bad news is the government is going to get worse, and in trying to solve, in not tackling the issues in South Africa. But the good news is the citizenry, communities, and the private sector are going to pick up the slack. The good guys are going to fill the gap in the end. Those two trends I see continuing.
All right. And then, Ernst, is there anything that you want to say to the audience? The link in the description to join Afriforum is there.
Right. Yeah. If you like my type of analysis, you can go check out my YouTube channel, Conscious Caracal, or if you want to see my Afrikaans channel, and Alle Ernst. Then also, if you want all those statistics we talked about regarding land ownership, you can go check out www.onteiening.co.za, or just go to Afriforum's website under reports. And then also, if you want to support Afriforum, everything we do, you can become a member. There is a link in the description of this video that you can follow to become a member. The more members we have, the more bad guys we can stop, and the more bad laws we can stop, and the more communities we can make better and more state-proof. There's already 300,000 patriots that are on Afriforum's side, donating members every month. So join that team in making a real difference and being part of the difference. So when it comes to particularly what can you do, my last words would be, don't just think that your future depends on the outcome of elections. Broaden your horizon, or broaden your perspective, rather diversify your change portfolio. So don't just put all your eggs in one basket. Start identifying those organizations doing good work in South Africa and support them in any way you can, whether that be through a donation or through volunteer work, or simply spreading the information about them good quality information and the truth.
Yeah, it's also helpful that you just mentioned who funds Afriforum, because that is apparently a hot topic, even though that's super simple and easy to find where the funding comes from. I truly appreciate, Ernst, you making the time to come talk to us, to give a bit of insight into South Africa. Um, Thank you for that. I'm going to continue the stream for a couple of minutes, just, sort of talk to people. Ernst, have a lovely day.
All right. Cheers. Have a good one. Tot ziens.
Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And, I just once again want to say a huge thank you to Ernst for doing this, for coming out, and for, spending his time with us, revealing what has happened. I also want to say, I think, Geo, so I've been paying attention to your comments throughout the stream, and I do want to I want to caution, you're obviously free to do whatever you want, right? And no one can really stop anyone. You will also find that I don't ban anyone for saying things. I believe that you and I should be able to speak about opinions. But I do want to caution and say, be careful that you don't get too emotionally involved in an argument to the point where you almost lose track of the rational side of the argument. So you said multiple times throughout this, Afriforum is condemning the refugee program, which is not true. Afriforum has never condemned the refugee program. Afriforum is not trying to stop the refugee program. But Afriforum is fighting for the Afrikaners that want to stay. So then you pick him up and say, you have no evidence that the majority of Afrikaners want to stay in South Africa and don't want to leave for America. But I will ask you an honest and legitimate question, Gio. Of all the people that you know, think about all of the Afrikaners that you know. How many of them are legitimately on their way to America? Think about all of the people that you know. And you'll find that the majority of them are probably not thinking about leaving. The majority of them are perfectly happy being in South Africa. They're unhappy with South Africa and they want things to change, but this is their country. But they're not advocating for it to be stopped, Gio. Like, this is exactly what Ernst said. They're not advocating for it to stop. In fact, if you listen to what they said to President Trump in their meeting with him, was they thanked him for the executive order. They thanked him for the pressure that he's applying to South Africa. But what they're arguing for, remember, Afriforum isn't an American organization. Afriforum is a South African organization. And so while they're perfectly fine with Afrikaners, so I'll take myself as an example. I don't begrudge South Africans that want to leave South Africa and go to America. By all means, go, and I wish you nothing but happiness and prosperity. But the second you get on that plane and you leave South Africa, I no longer fight for you. It's not that I now fight against you or I want you to, experience harm or anything of that nature. But I no longer fight for you. You're no longer in the country, right? You're now America's problem. And I hope that there are good Americans that will fight for your rights and that will keep you safe and free in America. And I know there is, because America is a great country, right? But my job is no longer to worry about you or care about you in any way, shape, or form because you're no longer here. My fight is for South Africa, South Africans, and the Afrikaner people in South Africa. And that's the same for Afriforum, right? The Afrikaners can leave, and that's fine, but Afriforum has to think about what happens to the Afrikaners that stay here. Because if all America is doing is saying you can come to America, that doesn't solve the problem for the Afrikaners who is in South Africa. So they're arguing for the Americans to do more to apply pressure to the government in South Africa to allow for ordinary Afrikaners in South Africa to exist without the government making their lives miserable. Um, I don't think that they're begrudging or trying to stop people from being refugees to America, but that's not their fight. That's not that has nothing to do with them. The first press briefing, Kali Kriel made it sound like he was speaking for the entire Afrikaner community. I remember that night on Chris Wyatt, I was attacked. When you say he was speaking for the entire Afrikaner community, are you talking about that the press conference where he said thank you but no thank you? Is that what you're referring to? Because that wasn't him speaking on behalf of the entire Afrikaner community. That was him saying thank you but no thank you. I don't want to go. I know hundreds of Afrikaners who had that exact same response. Thank you. Genuinely thank you for doing this, but not for me. I'm not going. I'm staying. In fact, I know Afrikaners that's willing to go to war to save South Africa. They don't want to go to America. They have no interest in going to America. I did not read that as Kali Kriel on behalf of all Afrikaners saying, thank you, but no thank you, we will not go. I took that as Kali Kriel speaking on behalf of himself and saying, we, as in those who don't want to go, don't want to go. And it's still consistent with everything else that I've explained. Kali Kriel and Afriforum are not speaking on behalf of the Afrikaners that want to leave. Because the Afrikaners that want to leave is no longer Afriforum's problem. It's the Afrikaners that want to stay that is Afriforum's problem. Those are the people that Afriforum needs to care about, because Afriforum is a South African organization, not an American one. So you take, for example, Ernst. What did Ernst do? Ernst left Afriforum and Solidarity to start Lex Libertas, which is an organization that is far more global. Lex Libertas cares far more. I mean, they're working with the Americans, they're working with the Young Republicans. So Lex Libertas is a far more globally oriented organization. Afriforum is a local organization. So if I'm Kali Kriel, right, and I'm saying thank you, no thank you, I think what's important, this is why I say don't get too emotional in how you read things. And I want to make one thing clear, guys. I'm not a member of Afriforum. Not a member of Afriforum. I don't belong to any civil or political organizations. I'm not a member of Afriforum Plus. I'm not a member of Afriforum. I'm not a member of Solidarity. I'm just Stefan, and I'll speak to everyone and anyone, and I always try to be fair and balanced in how I approach things. But this is why I said, be careful to get too emotional in how you read things, because I genuinely believe that if I'm Kali Kriel and I'm the leader of Afriforum, an organization that speaks for Afrikaners in South Africa, then me saying thank you, no thank you, isn't me saying that no Afrikaners want to go to America. That's me saying that me and the Afrikaners that want to stay in America, in South Africa, we don't care about a refugee program, because that doesn't help us. Thank you for that, for those who do want to leave, but that doesn't help us that want to stay. We need more. We need a program that helps us that want to stay. I don't read it as, and it's always important, and I'll probably just say that because I'm not saying this as someone who never does it. I can say this as a sinner myself, because I make this mistake a lot. Always try in your judgment of others to be as charitable as possible. I believe, Chris and Go, that the interpretation of Kali's words that you guys are applying are the least charitable. You have determined to read a specific way, and that's the end of it. You will not look at anything else. This is who he is, right? He spoke on behalf of all Afrikaners. How dare he? How dare he? And yet, Afriforum has not tried to shut down the refugee program. Afriforum has not gone to America to say, don't take any more refugees. So, in the world of interpretations, do you think, let me ask you guys this, do you think that there is a chance that you could be interpreting it wrong? Just a chance. It might be a small chance, like a 5% chance that you might be interpreting it wrong. No South African contingency has said they don't respect what is on offer as a refugee. Wish those well who take the step. Don't turn on anyone who stays. So you do not need a program to stay. We as South Africans need to come together and build this country. Joe, we do need a program to stay to defend us from the communists, leftists, and people who want to destroy this country. So yes, we do need protection. I'm sorry to say this, but if it's left up to the communist EFF, ANC, Peter Kriel, Carl Niehaus, Kim Heller, and the leftists in this country, then we absolutely need a defense. Because if we don't get a defense, we'll get civil war. Because the left seems incapable of keeping to themselves. They want to tell everyone else how they must live, what they must do, what they can't do, how they can do it, and what they can't, and exactly how to do everything. I'll give you guys a great example. I'll give you guys a great example of how the leftists in this country operate, and it is sickening. Absolutely sickening. Here is why we need protections in this country from the nonsense of the left. What you're looking at is a letter, ladies and gentlemen. You're looking at a letter from the DA in Cape Town. The DA, remember that party that just last week said, citizens, not subjects. You want to know what this warning is for? A private citizen in Cape Town was feeding birds in their own yard. They were feeding birds in their own yard. This letter is from the city of Cape Town to tell this resident that they must stop immediately. Immediately. This is against the rules of Cape Town. How dare a human being feed wild animals? This is what we need protection from. The moral busybodies of the left that consistently wants to interfere with everyone else's lives because they think they're making things better. So no, we do need programs and protections to ensure that the left in this country can get shut down. And look, I'll be very honest. I do believe that there is a war coming. I believe that firmly. I believe that the final war between capitalists and communists are coming because one of the two ideologies must be eradicated. These two ideologies cannot coexist. These two ideologies cannot share the same borders of a country. There is only one option, and that is the complete and utter eradication of one. Because these two ideologies is fundamentally diametrically opposed to one another. And there's no easy way to deal with it. You cannot, as a capitalist, give even an inch to the communist. Even an inch is too much because they will use that inch with their filth and their corruption to spread it everywhere. Is it repeating itself? Two cannot exist simultaneously. Yeah, I agree. How are you doing, Suzanne? But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I truly appreciate you guys being here and you guys watching the stream. I don't want to go too long because, people came here to watch my interview with Ernst van Zyl. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had an amazing time talking to Ernst, learning about Afriforum and what Afriforum is up to. Tomorrow, I have just an interesting a conversation that's coming up. I'm going to be talking to Leon Claessens. He is the head researcher at Research Africa. They just released their report at 12 o'clock this afternoon about the absolute dismantled municipalities of South Africa, bankrupt to the max. So we're going to be talking about him to get a lot more insight into the figures of just how absolutely derelict our municipalities become and the scale of the problem. That's going to be tomorrow. It probably won't be 2 hours, although it could be, but he's going to run us through his report and sort of just share with us the state of South Africa's municipal finances. So watch out for that one tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Thank you so much for everyone that has supported the channel financially. I truly appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.